Hello everyone and welcome back to our share in Dirshu Bahalacha. I think we should have some extra time today, so I'm going to turn back to Pirkei Avos. We're holding in Parak Beis, and we are in the middle of Mishnah Beis. So, let me just get my timer going over here. Okay, so the Mishnah says, we're up to the middle of the Mishnah. The Mishnah says, V'chal ha'amelim im hatzibur. Everybody who does work on behalf of the tzibur, on behalf of Klal Yisrael, yihiyu amelim imahem l'shem shamayim. They should make sure that the work that they do l'shem shamayim. They do it for the sake of heaven. And the Rav says over here, what does that mean that they should do it l'shem shamayim? Says the Rav, v'loi kidei litoil atorah, not so that they should take a crown. They shouldn't be doing the work that they do so that they can get kavod, they can get honor, loymar, so that they should be able to say, kach v'kach asisi b'shvil hatzibur. I did this, I did that on behalf of the tzibur. So if somebody goes to work for a yeshiva and he wants to go build them a new building, he shouldn't do it having in mind that, oh boy, I can't wait until this building goes up and we're going to have a Chanukah Sabayis and I'm going to walk around and I'm going to say, look what I did. Look what I did. Look at this building. You know how hard I worked? That's not why he should do it. He should do it simply for the sake of the tzibur. He should know that he's working for Klal Yisrael and he's doing it l'shem shamayim. He's doing it because this is what Bar Elam wants. The Rebbeinu Shalom gave him the kaiches, the abilities to be able to do this. He's using his abilities the best way he can in the way that the Rebbeinu Shalom wants, and that's why he's doing it. He's not doing it to get any kavod. And the Mishnah goes on to explain why. Shezechus avoisam misayaton. Because you have to understand that when you do work for the tzibur, it's the schus avois. It's the merit of the forefathers of Klal Yisrael. I don't know if this means specifically Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Pashtus, whenever we talk about schus avois, it means Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Maybe it also means others that came after them. But the schus avois is what helps Klal Yisrael. V'tzit kasam omedes la'ad. And their righteousness, the righteousness of the avos, that is everlasting. And that's why you're going to have success. That's what the Rav says over here. The Rav says that this is the Mishnah explaining, the Tana is explaining why you should do your work l'shem shamayim. He's saying, what are you going to do? You're going to do your work and then you're going to take kavod for what you accomplished. You have to realize that you don't accomplish anything. Whatever you did, it's not what you did that brought about the end results. If you set out to build a building for yeshiva, and Baruch Hashem, you were able to collect the funds, and then you were able to get the builder, and you were able to get the architect, and you sat with the architect for hours, and you said this wall should be here, and that wall should be here, and then you gave it over to the builder, and you got the permits, and you were down in City Hall, and you stayed up late at night, and then you got up early in the morning to go check on the progress of the building, and you told the builder this isn't in the right place, and that's not in the right place, and maybe we could do this better, and maybe we should change this, and maybe we should adjust that, and you spent a year or 2 years of sleepless nights and long days, and now Baruch Hashem, the building is up. Realize that it's not you that got the building up. Im Hashem lo yivne bayis. If the Rebbeinu Shalom doesn't build a house, shav amlu bainav bay. It's for nothing that the builders worked. All of the builders' work will go down the tubes, and you're going to meet roadblocks at every turn, and this is going to go wrong, and that's going to go wrong, unless the Rebbeinu Shalom wants it built. If you go to build a building for a Mosid, realize that if you're Matzliach, the reason you were Matzliach is because Klal Yisrael has Chus Avos. Because Klal Yisrael has the merit of Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, and therefore they have the Rebbeinu Shalom looking out for them, and it is that Chus that brings it to Hatzlacha, not the work that you did. And we see this in the Rav. The Rav says, Sheschus avoisan shel tzibur. It is the schus avois that the tzibur has. V'tzidkasan ha'imedes la'ad. That righteousness of the avois and the righteousness of Klal Yisrael, which is everlasting. He ha'misayes el ha'oiskin imahen lahoitzi la'or tzidkan. That is what is going to help those who are working for the tzibur to go have hatzlacha and go be able to accomplish what they accomplish. It's not because the person who's working for the tzibur did such a good job. It's the schus avos and it's the schus of the tzibur that makes it come to fruition. Now you'll say, so if you're telling me that it's nothing that I did, so then what? So did I do it for nothing? Did I waste all my time? Says the Tana, va'atem, and you people who taka work for the tzibur l'shem shamayim, mal ani aleichem schar harbe kilo asisem. You don't worry. You're going to get schar. You're going to get reward for what you did, and you're going to get reward for the work that you did, as if it's your work that led to the accomplishment. So you're going to get your reward that you deserve. But just realize that ultimately the accomplishment comes from the schus of the tzibur, from the schus of Klal Yisrael, not from your own hishtadlus. Like the Rav says, even though the accomplishment is not going to come from your efforts, rather the accomplishment is coming from the schus avos of the tzibur, still malani aleichem schar, I'm going to give you schar ki'ilu atem asisem hayeshua hazois b'Yisrael, as if you're the one who accomplished this great salvation in Klal Yisrael. I'll give you the schar, you, the executive director who put in all the work. I will give you the schar, as if it's your work that led to the final result, that led to what we accomplished. But you have to remember that it's really not you. You have to remember that really it's the schus of the tzibur that leads to things getting done. As long as you do your work l'shem shamayim, you'll get the reward that you deserve. That's the first pshat that the Rav has. Now the Rav has another interesting pshat. The Rav says, Pirush Acher, another explanation is, anybody who works with the tzibur, anybody who works for the tzibur, meaning he goes out to the tzibur and he persuades the tzibur and he speaks to the tzibur to do a dvar mitzvah, litzdaka, to raise money for tzedakah, or to redeem somebody who's been captured. He should make sure that he does that work l'shem shamayim. Because sometimes you have to raise an amount of funds that seems impossible. Somebody comes and somebody says, listen, we need another new building. $3 million, $4 million, $5 million, where's it going to come from? How is it even possible? The answer is that the schus avos of the tzibur, that is what is going to have the Rebbeinu Shalom go ahead and make sure that you're successful in doing what you do. But you have to go out l'shem shamayim. And I think one of the reasons the Tana says this over here also is because sometimes it seems impossible. Sometimes the executive director is tasked with a job that really seems nigh impossible. He looks at his payroll, he looks at his expenses, and he says, it's just not possible. Where's the money going to come from? And if it's very hard for somebody to go ahead and do work where he just doesn't see any end in sight. He doesn't see any possibility of accomplishing what he has to accomplish. So he goes out in the morning with a heavy heart. He goes out and he says, this is just not shaykh. How am I going to do it? The answer is, realize that all you're doing is hishtadlus l'shem shamayim. That's all you're doing. You get up in the morning and you say, I'm working for Borei Olam. The yeshiva needs the money, the mosid needs the money, the Rebbeinu Shalom wants me to do this, I'm going out l'shem shamayim and I'm doing whatever I can. Maybe today I'll only raise $500. I need 5 million. Maybe today I'll only raise 500. But the 500 that I raised is the work that I was able to do, and I did it l'shem shamayim. After you do that, the schus avos of the tzibur is going to have you raise the other money. You'll get a phone call from the last person you ever expected. Somebody will call you up and say, do you remember me from Yeshiva Ketana? You remember we were in Yeshiva together? I heard that you're raising money for Yeshiva and you have to build a building. You should know I made it big. I have lots of money and I'm going to give you the money that you need. You don't know where it's going to come from. You go out and you do what you can and do it l'shem shamayim so that you shouldn't be meyuyish. You shouldn't give up. You shouldn't say this is impossible. This is not something that could possibly happen. If you think that way, then nobody wants to do the work. So don't have an impossible goal in your mind and go out every morning with a heavy heart. Instead, realize that all you're doing is work l'shem shamayim. And that you could do. It doesn't matter if you raise $10, $100, or $10,000. If you go out l'shem shamayim and you raise $10, you spent your day working l'shem shamayim. So you're already accomplished. The money that you need, that will come from the schus avos and the tzidkasam ha'imedus lad. That's where that's going to come from. You who are going out to persuade the tzibur to give, the Rebbeinu Shalom says, not only that, not only will I help you, but if you do it l'shem shamayim, I'm going to look at it as if you built that entire $5 million building from your own money. That's the schar that I'm going to give you. So I always remember when I see this Mishnah, a beautiful vart. I don't think I've ever said it here in the Pirkei Avos shir before, but I always remember a beautiful vart that I saw from Rav Moshe Feinstein, Zechet Tzadik V'Kadosh L'Vracha. He wrote in one of his notebooks, he said in Parshas Beshalach by Kriyas Yamsuf, it says that Klal Yisrael came to the Yam, and they're walking over there in the Midbar, and they have a Yam in front of them, and behind them they have Parai and all of his chariots coming and chasing them. So what did they do? They came crying to Moshe Rabbeinu. They cried to Moshe Rabbeinu and said, what are we going to do? The Rebbeinu Shalom said to Moshe Rabbeinu, I don't understand. Ma titzak elai. Why are they crying to me? Daber el b'nei Yisrael, speak to the b'nei Yisrael, v'yiso. Tell them that they should go. They should travel. We all know that what happened is, they went into the Yam. Nachshon ben Aminadav, the Nasi of Shevet Yehuda, went into the Yam until the Yam was all the way up to his neck, and then the Yam split, and then they walked through on dry land. But Rav Moshe asked, he said, I don't understand. It sounds like the Rebbeinu Shalom is upset with Klal Yisrael. He said to Moshe Rabbeinu, Ma titzak elai. Why are they crying to me? What do you mean, why are they crying to you? They're crying to you because there's a Yam in front of them, and there's an army behind them, and there's mountains on both sides of them, and there's nowhere for them to go, so of course they're crying to you. When a Yid is in tzara, when a Yid is a problem, what does he do? He cries to Rebbeinu Shalom. So of course they're crying to you. Why are you complaining that they're crying to you? The way Rav Moshe answered the question in his notebook was a pella. It was a wonder. What he wrote in the notebook was the following words. Mikan, we see from here, sheyesh chiyuv liyasid yeshivas be'America. We see from here that there's an obligation to establish yeshivas in Klal Yisrael, here in America. What does one thing have to do with the other? How does that answer the question? So I found in another notebook where Rav Moshe was Meirich, he wrote a little bit more and he fleshed out his answer. And his answer was as follows. He says like this. He says, when the Bnei Yisrael left Mitzrayim, Hashem made them a promise. Hashem said, I'm going to take you out of Mitzrayim and I am going to bring you to Eretz Yisrael, an Eretz Zavas Chalav Udvash. So that means that Klal Yisrael, when they were walking in the Midbar, they had a promise from Borei Olam that they're going to leave point A and they're going to arrive at point B. Says Rav Moshe, he said, if you have a promise from the Rebbeinu Shalom that you're going to depart from point A and you're going to arrive at point B, and in the middle you encounter a Yam, you encounter a sea, you don't stop and turn to the Rebbeinu Shalom and daven to Hashem, what am I supposed to do? There's a Yam in my way. Hashem told you, you're going to leave point A, you're going to arrive in point B. There's a Yam in the way, so walk into the Yam. What will happen? Either the Yam will split, which is what happened to the Kriyas Yamsuf, or maybe you'll turn into a bird and you'll fly over the Yam, or maybe you'll walk under the water and you'll find out that you're like a fish and you could breathe under the Yam. But whatever it is, there's no need for you to turn to the Rebbeinu Shalom and to ask the Rebbeinu Shalom for help. The Rebbeinu Shalom already promised you, you're going to leave point A, you're going to arrive at point B. So you're not going to drown in the Yam. If you drown in the Yam, you're not going to arrive at point B. So don't worry. Just go. That's why Hashem asked Moshe Rabbeinu, Ma titzak elai. Why are they crying to me? I promised them they're going to arrive in Eretz Yisrael, so go. What does that have to do with establishing yeshivas in America? So Rav Moshe wrote the following. He said, we know that Klal Yisrael has a promise from the Rebbeinu Shalom, Shelo Yishkach Torah mipi zaroi, that the Torah will not be forgotten from Klal Yisrael's children. L'doirei doiros, for all the generations, we have a promise from the Rebbeinu Shalom that the Torah will not be forgotten. Asked Rav Moshe, he said, really? Go to upstate New York. I happen to be in upstate New York now. Go to upstate New York. Check out Monticello. Check out Ellenville. Check out Woodburn. Check out Kerhonkson. Check out all of these little towns in upstate New York. They were full of Yidden. Before the war, after the war, they were full of Yidden. The only thing that remains from Yiddishkeit, except for the Yidden that come up during the summer, just about the only thing that remains from Yiddishkeit are the names of the streets. You still have a lot of Jewish names on the streets. Other than that, there's nothing left. There might be a sign, synagogue, but there's nothing left. What happened? There were no yeshivas. They came up here. It's like somebody told me that that's where the Yetzer Hara puts in its work. The Yetzer Hara tells the Yidden that go to such towns, they say, build shuls. Build big, beautiful shuls. Just don't build yeshivas. The Yetzer Hara knows you could build shuls from now till the cows come home. You could build the most beautiful shul. If you don't have a yeshiva, what will happen is the shul will be used by one generation, and then that's it. There's no second generation. The one thing the Yetzer Hara doesn't want is don't build a yeshiva, because building a yeshiva means that the Torah will go on. So Rav Moshe asks, what do you mean that there's a promise from the Rebbeinu Shalom, Shelo Yishkach Torah mipi zaroi? In all of these towns, the Torah was forgotten. So Rav Moshe said the reason the Torah was forgotten is because they didn't build yeshivas. Fragt Rav Moshe, you want to build yeshivas? Where's the money going to come from? Kesef Minolan. The amount of money it takes to build a yeshiva and make the buildings and make the parking lots and then make the payroll and pay the teachers and pay the rabbeim and give the food and the books and the svarim and the lights, everything that you need. The amount of money that it costs to run a yeshiva, it's not shaykh. So what do you mean that we should establish yeshivas? Says Rav Moshe, it's the same thing. You have a promise from the Rebbeinu Shalom, Shelo Yishkach Torah mipi zaroi. And the only way that can happen is if you build a yeshiva. You want to know where the money is going to come from? That's God's problem. You build the yeshiva, the money will come. The same way you step into the Yam Suf, the Yam will split. You have a promise from the Rebbeinu Shalom that it will work out. Because the promise is, Shelo Yishkach Torah mipi zaroi, the Torah won't be forgotten. And for that you need yeshivas. So you have a promise from the Rebbeinu Shalom that it will work out. So go do what you can do. You hire a contractor, you make the phone calls. You can't sit back in your chair. You have to make the phone calls, and you have to call the Gevirim, and you have to get on the plane, and you have to travel around, and you have to do the work for the fundraising. But you do whatever you can. Ultimately, it will come from Bari Olam. Ultimately, the Rebbeinu Shalom, it will work. And you see, the Taka Rav Moshe opened up yeshiva when he was 70. He was 70 years old. He opened up yeshiva Staten Island, and the money came. And the money still comes, even though they don't know what they're doing when it comes to fundraising. But the money comes anyway. Somehow the money comes. You do what you can, and you do it l'shem shamayim. You work l'shem shamayim, not to have a big fancy office, and not to have your name all over the place. You do it l'shem shamayim. You do it because you want to hold out Torah, because you want to build Torah. And you'll raise $50 here and $100 here and $18 here and $250 there. And ultimately, somehow, all the money will come together and you'll have the hatzlacha and it will work out. But you got to do it l'shem shamayim. All right, now, like usually happens, we went over a little bit on the others. Now let's dive into the Mishnah Berurah. So, we are holding on Reish Nun Aleph Amid Aleph. We're on Reish Nun Aleph Amid Aleph. We're in Siman Shin Pei Beis, and we're at near the bottom of Reish Nun Aleph Amid Aleph. We are at Sif Yud. By me, it's in the bottom line of Reish Nun Amid Aleph. Says the Mechaber, Im Sachru Mimenu Bal Karchai. We've been talking again about. We have been talking about being maskir rishus from an Eina Yehudi. We said that if there's a non-Jew living in the chutzner, you have to go rent his rishus in the chutzner. So again, let's say you have a case, you have 5 Yiddish households in the chutzner, and you have 1 non-Jewish household in the chutzner. So the 5 Yidden are going to join together in an Eruvei Chatzeros, but you still have a non-Jew here that has a house in the chutzner. So what do you have to do? You have to go to the non-Jew, and you have to rent his rishus. You have to rent his rights in the chutzner from him, and then your Eruvei Chatzeros will be effective. So what happens in Sachrai Mimenu Bal Karchai? You went ahead and you made the schiris, but you did it against his will. Now what does that mean, against his will? So let's take a look right away in the Mishnah Berurah on the bottom line, Ois Katan Lamed Aleph. Bal Karchai, the Chavetz Chaim says, Pirush. What's the explanation of that, Bal Karchai? Ein Yechaylin Litein Schirusai L'Rishusai. You can't give him the rental money for his rishus. You'll take $25 and you put it down in front of him on the table. And I'm going to skip the brackets for a moment here. And to say to him, here is your rental money for your rights in the chutzner, so that we should be able to carry in the chutzner l'shana for a year, just like we did last year. So, did he take the money? He didn't take the money. You just took money, you shoved it down on the table in front of him, and you said, here it is. And this is going to cover us for a year, the same way we did it last year, and you turn around and you walk out. He never agreed to it, and he never took the money. If he takes the money, even if he protests, but he took the money. But over here, he never took the money. So that's not going to work. Now, let's go back into the Mechaber before we do the rest of that Mishnah Berurah. So, Im Sachrai Mimenu, back on Reish Nun Aleph Amud Aleph. Im Sachrai Mimenu Bal Karchai. If you rented it for him Bal Karchai, against his will, it was not with his agreement. Einay Moyel, it's not effective. And says the Mechaber, this is true. Af al pi sha'yaragil haskir mikaidim. Even if in 2018 he was very agreeable to enter into a rental agreement with you, now you came back to him in 2019 and you said, we want to do the same agreement as last year. And he's like, well, I don't know. So you slapped the money down on the table in front of him and you walked out. That doesn't work. And you can't say, look, he agreed to it last year, so he probably agreed to it this year too. That doesn't work. Now we'll go back to the Mishnah Berurah. And the Mishnah Berurah, the brackets that I skipped, the Mishnah Berurah says, even though this guy was in the habit until now of entering into this agreement, still you can't do this. Now skip a little bit in the Mishnah Berurah because we read this already, down to where the Lamed Gimel of the Shar Hatzion is. Even though when it comes to Eruvei Chatzeros, we saw in the end of Siman Shin Samach Zayin, the Be'eruv, that when it comes to an Eruvei Chatzeros, if there was one person living in the Chatzar who until now always joined into the Eruvei Chatzeros, and now suddenly he says, you know what, all these years I joined in the Eruv, I don't want to join in the Eruv anymore. And that's it, I'm not doing it anymore. Now, if this guy doesn't join in the Eruv, he brings down the whole Eruv. You can't have somebody living in the Chatzar who doesn't join the Eruv, and now this guy says he doesn't want to. So we had in Siman Shin Samach Zayin a shita that said, Boin v'noitlen mimenu bal karchai, that we could do this against his will. So Reuven, Shimon, Levi, and Yehuda live in a Chatzar together. All the years, they all joined together in a Eruvei Chatzeros. And now in 2019, Reuven says, I'm sorry, I don't want to be part of the Eruv anymore. So we had a shita that said, Shimon, Levi, and Yehuda could go to Reuven's house, and they could take bread for the Eruv against his will. And they could forcibly put him into the Eruv. Hacha Shani. Over here by a non-Jew, that doesn't work. You cannot be maskir rishos from the non-Jew against his will. De'ein medamen akum liYisrael, because you cannot compare a non-Jew to a Jew le'inyin kviya b'dvar mitzvah, when it comes to the question of coercing him to join in a mitzvah. When it comes to a Yid, you could coerce a Yid to join in a mitzvah because we say that really the Yid wants to do the mitzvah. Ultimately every Yid wants to do what's right. Somewhere in the depths of his neshama, he wants to do what's right. But there are things that are preventing him. He's angry at his neighbor, he's upset about this, he's upset about that. So he's saying, no, I'm not joining the Erev. But if you go and you take it from him bal karchai, somewhere in the depths of his neshama, in the depths of his heart, he says to himself, yeah, of course I'm really part of the Erev. I mean, was Draitman King Cup. I'm not going to be part of the Erev, and I'm going to have on my head that nobody can carry in the chutzner. I'm not going to do that. But that works by a Jew. That does not work by a non-Jew. The non-Jew does not have the Dvar Mitzvah. He has no concept of the Dvar Mitzvah. So you can't say that ultimately he wants to do it. If he doesn't want to do it, he doesn't want to do it. Now there's a very interesting Sharet Zion over here in Ois Cotton Lamed Daled, where the Sharet Zion points out something interesting. First he says that this halacha comes from the Taz and the Sefer Shabbos. Uba'atzei al Mugim Kosvei. In the Atzei al Mugim he writes, the Balav Hachi, without this concept that there's a difference between a Yid and a Goy, the Atzei al Mugim says it's impossible that it should work to be masker rishus from a non-Jew against his will. That can't work. The chol ikar takanas haschirus, let's not lose sight. Why did Chazal say that we have to be masker rishus from a non-Jew? The whole reason we have to be masker rishus from a non-Jew, really, the non-Jew's rights in the chutzner don't answer on us. Me'ikra din, we said that the non-Jew living in the chutzner doesn't ruin our Erev. We don't care about the non-Jew that lives in the chutzner. He doesn't affect us in any way. Really, his rishus is not a rishus, so he doesn't destroy our Erev. So why do we have to be masker rishus? Only kidei shelo yadur imai, because we want to create a difficult situation where we're going to have to go to the non-Jew to be masker rishus, and he's going to say that he doesn't want to do it, so we're going to feel funny asking him, and he might not agree to it, so we're not going to be able to carry in the chutzner. Memele, either we're going to move or we're going to buy him out and he's going to move, because Chazal didn't want us to live together in the chutzner. Umishum da'akam loy moiger, the Chazal made this takana because they said the non-Jew will not agree to the schirus. Ve'em mahani bal karchai. Now, if you could do this without his agreement, mahayilu chachamim etakanosan. If we could do this without the agreement of the non-Jew, so what did the Chazal accomplish by telling us we have to go ask the non-Jew? Even if the non-Jew says, I'm not interested in this and I don't want to do it, we could just do it bal karchai. So there's no difficult situation. It's just a formality. We go over to the guy, we say, hey, Tony, how you doing? Here's 50 cents. I rented your rishus in the chutzner. Have a good day. So what's the problem? Why am I going to have to move? Why is he going to have to move? Elamaya must be that we can't do it without his agreement. And now we have to go, and we have to talk to him, and we have to explain to him, and we have to beg him, and we have to ask him. It creates a whole difficult situation. That's why they made the takana. So the Atzei al Mugim says we don't have to come on to this idea that the reason we can't do it is because he doesn't really want, and by doing it bal karchai it's not effective, that only works by a Yid. We don't have to come on to that. We can't do it bal karchai because that would take away the whole takana of Chazal. Okay, top of Reish Nun Aleph Amud Beis, let's go back into the Mechaber. So you cannot be masker rishus from a non-Jew against his will. Says the Mechaber now, Avol me ishtai, but if you want to go to the non-Jew's wife, ay mischirai ulikitai, or you want to go to one of his employees, one of his retainers. Now the difference between schirai and likitai, the Mishnah Berurah is going to say, is schirai is a full-time employee. Or like the Mishnah Berurah says, somebody who works for the non-Jew all year round. A likitai literally is a harvester. Likitai is a part-time employee. He's a seasonal employee. So the Mechaber says here, Aval me'ishtai, if you want to go to the non-Jew's wife, or you want to go to an employee of his, either one who works for him full year or one who's only a seasonal employee, you could be masker rishus through them. So you don't have to go to the owner of the property. Tony is the owner of the property, and Tony has a few retainers. He has some people who work for him. So you could go to Max, who works for Tony all year round, and you could ask Max to rent you the rishus. You don't have to go straight to the owner. And you could do this, you could rent the rishus from them, af al pi shehu moiche, even though you know that Tony, the owner of the property, you know that he really doesn't want to do it. So let's say you went to Tony and you said, Tony, listen, I got a technical problem here. I have to rent. Don't ask me what this means. Don't ask me why. You say to Tony, Tony, I got to rent from you your rights in the chutzner. For whatever reason, I got to rent it from you. Tony says, no, I'm not doing it. You're doing some heebie-jeebie stuff over here. You're putting the whammy on me. You're giving me the evil eye. I don't know what this is. I don't want to have anything to do with this. So you didn't get the first base with Tony. So now you're going to go to Max, who works for Tony. And you say, Max, listen, I have a problem. I have to rent Tony's rights in the chutzner. He doesn't want to talk to me. The law is I could do it through you. Would you be willing to do it for me? Max says, yes, that is effective. And we'll discuss why. And you could do this even though you know that the owner is not maskim. Says the Chavetz Chaim, says the Mishnah Berurah, nice cut and lamed beis. Aval me ishtoi. But if you want to rent the rishus from the non-Jew's wife, or any other family member of his, anybody else who lives in his house, or from a full-time employee or a seasonal employee, Pirish, Sachir la'avodas kol hashana, a Sachir is a year-round employee, Likitai liyamais hakatzer, a harvester, Likitai is only a seasonal employee, Afal pishu moiche, you could rent the rishus from one of these people, even though you know that the owner is not maskim, even though he said straight out, I don't want to rent the rishus to you. And the Mishnah Berurah explains why this works. Kevan de me'ikar adin ein dirasa iseres elo kadesha lo yilmain mimaisav. Since, like we've said, like we keep repeating over here, since me'ikar adin, the guy doesn't really answer on you in the first place, and the whole reason we're being masker rishus is only because we don't really want you living together. So it's not a real schirus. I don't need a real rental agreement. Therefore, hekelu ba the Chazal wa mekel, they were lenient. Therefore, you could arrange this rental agreement even through an employee. Kabalabayas, same way you could do it through the Balabayas. This, by the way, is fascinating to me over here, because look what's going on over here. On the one hand, the Chazal decided that they want to create an awkward situation because they don't want you living in a chutzner together with a goy. So the Chazal said, you want to make an Eruve Chatzeres and you have a non-Jew living in your chutzner, you got to go to him and you got to get him to rent his rishus to you. So on the one hand, the Chazal were very stringent. They required this schirus, even though really you don't need it, because they don't want you living together. On the other hand, there were also mekel. And they said that if the non-Jew is giving you a hard time and he doesn't want to rent his rishus to you, we'll be mekel and we'll be lenient and we'll tell you you can even go to one of his retainers, to one of his employees, and you could arrange the rental agreement through the employee. Why didn't Chazal just say, you know what? If the Tony doesn't want to rent to you, you're stuck. Could you do it through an employee? No. You're stuck, and now you're not going to be able to carry in the chutzner, so now you'll up and move. And that's what we wanted you to do in the first place. Chazal didn't do that, because the bottom line is, the bottom line is that the way of the Torah is sweet. The Torah doesn't want to create an unlivable situation. So the Torah says, I'm going to put you in an awkward situation, I'm going to make you go to the non-Jew, and I'm going to make you be maskirishus, because I really don't want you living together. No. Once I put you in an awkward situation, maybe you'll taka get up and you'll taka take the hint and you'll move out or you'll buy out the non-Jew, but you won't live together. On the other hand, you might not. You might say you're stuck. This is where you have to live. You have no choice. You don't have anywhere else to live. So this is where you're living. All right, in that case, I don't want to generate a situation where it's going to be usher for you to be metaltal in the chutzner. So go be maskirishus from the guy, because that's what you have to do. It didn't work out. He doesn't want to cooperate. Listen, I'm going to let you go ahead and do it through schira or likitai. I'm going to allow you to do it through an employee or a retainer as well. I'm going to be makel to help you out. I don't want to put you into an unlivable situation. Okay, we're in the middle of the Mishnah Berurah's Katan Lamed, the second wide line in the Mishnah Berurah. The Kosav Agra b'Biyurai. The Gra says in the Bir Agra, you should realize this idea that you could go to the non-Jew's wife and you could be masker rishus from the non-Jew's wife, even though you know that her husband was moicha, her husband protested, and her husband said that he does not want this, you could go do it through the wife anyway. Points out the Bir Agra, this is only true according to the first opinion that we had in Shin Samach Zayin Sif Aleph. But according to the second opinion over there, where we said that by Yeruve Chatzerois, when you want to go ahead and you want to have somebody join in the Erev. So let's say you have Ruvain living in your Chatzer, and you want Ruvain to give pas to the Erev. So we said over there, you could go to the wife, you can go to Ruvain's wife, and even if you know Ruvain said he doesn't want to be part of the Erev, if Ruvain's wife gives pas to the Erev, that's effective. But that was the subject of a machlekes. In the first opinion, we said that works. The second opinion said no. Ruvain's wife cannot give pas to the Erev if she knows that her husband is not maskim. It's only if her husband doesn't know about it. Shalom midaita, if her husband doesn't know about it, so she could do it without her husband's knowledge. But she can't do it against her husband's will. So too over here, says the Gra. The same discrepancy will hold true over here. This that the Mechaber says, that you could go to Tony's wife, and you could be maskir Tony's rishus in the Chatzer from his wife, even against her husband's will, that's only according to the first opinion in Shin Samach Zayin. According to the second opinion in Shin Samach Zayin, Tony's wife could only do this without her husband's knowledge, but she cannot do it against her husband's will. So, according to the second opinion in Shin Samach Zayin, you cannot rent the rishus of the non-Jew from the non-Jew's wife. If the husband already protested verbally and said clearly, I do not want to rent him my rights in the Chatzar. Oh, no, we didn't do that yet. Now, I just want to point out a Bir Halacha over here. Take a look at the Bir Halacha. So the Mechaber is saying that you could, when you need to rent the rishus from the non-Jew, not only could you rent it from the non-Jew himself, you could rent it from his wife, or you could rent it from one of his employees, even if the owner, even if Tony said straight out, I don't want to rent the rishus to these Jews. Okay, so now you could go to one of his employees, and you could rent the rishus from one of his employees against his will. Says the Bir Halacha over here, Dibur HaMaschil Oy Meschira Yulikitai, Ayin me Mishnah Berurah, take a look at what I wrote in the Mishnah Berurah, V'ayin ba'atzei amugim, Ois Chav Gimel B'sif Yodalet, Shekasav, where it's written, De be'inan dafka sheyia loy l'schira yulikitai, rishus lehishtamish bebeisai oy b'chatzeroi. If you're going to be maskir rishus from the non-Jew, by going over to one of his employees and entering into a rental agreement with one of his employees, it has to be a situation where this employee has the rights to use the house. So, if Tony is the one who owns the property, and he has an employee who works for him in his appetizing store, and he never sets foot in Tony's house, you can't go to this worker and say, listen, I want you to rent me rishus over Tony's house. This guy has nothing to do with Tony's house. The only time this works is if we're talking about an employee who actually works and lives in the house together with Tony. If Tony has a worker who lives with him in the house and he has rishus to use his house, then he could go ahead and he could rent out the rishus in the house on behalf of Tony. But if he has nothing to do with the house, he can't do that. Okay, let's go a little bit weiter. Says the Ramah, so we're back in Sif Yod Aleph, on the top of Reish Yod Aleph on the Beis. Says the Ramah, Uschiroi shel schiroi, ulikitoi shel balabayis. Let's say the balabayis, let's say the owner of the household has a non-Jewish employee. So we're saying that you could rent the rishus of the non-Jew from the employee. How about if the employee is a manager? Okay, so Tony runs a big household over here, and he has his manager, Frankie. Frankie is his manager. Now, Frankie as a manager also has the right to go hire people to work for him. So maybe Frankie hired Tony. So Tony, I said, was the owner. Tony is the owner. Frankie is the manager. Frankie wants to go ahead and hire Vinny. Now you went over to Tony and you asked Tony that Tony should rent his rights in the chutzah to you. Tony said no. So you went to Frankie, the manager, and you said, look, Frankie, I need to rent Rishus from Tony. You're Tony's manager. Could you rent me his Rishus in the Chatzar? Tony says, you know what? I'm a little bit busy right now. Go to Vinny. Vinny is the head landscaper. He can help you out. You go to Vinny. Vinny, could you rent me Tony's authority, his rights in the Chatzar? Vinny says, sure, whatever you want. No problem. Forget about it. So you go ahead, you give Vinny a quarter, and Vinny gives you over Tony's Rishus in the Chatzar. That works. Even though now you went to somebody who's twice removed from the owner, right? This Tony is the owner, Frankie is the manager. You didn't get the Rishus from Frankie, who works straight for Tony. No, you went to Vinny, who works for Frankie. So you're twice removed from Tony. Still, says the Ramah, this would work. The employee of the full-time employee or the seasonal employee of the owner, he has the same din as an employee who works directly for the balabayis. Says the Mishnah Berurah in Ois Cotton Lamed Hey, Shel Schira Yolikitai, if you go to a secondary employee, you want to go to an employee who is hired by another employee, the Chavetz Chaim says this is only true if Frankie, who's the one that hired Vinny, was authorized by Tony to go ahead and hire somebody who's going to have rights in the entire house. Then it works. Then the secondary employee has a din of being an employee of the owner himself. But if he doesn't have that authority, if Frankie the manager didn't have the authority to go ahead and hire another worker, then this would not work. And this will conclude today's share. Tomorrow we will pick up from Seif Yud Beis. Be well.